friend and amazing co-host Ebony K. Williams to talk about the Kandi and Todd divorce proceedings. So on this one, what we're going to do is utilize Ebony's amazing intelligence when it comes to the law and being a celebrity and how those two things sort of intersect when it comes to what happens with a celebrity divorce, the money that's at stake, children being involved, minor children at that, in addition to recent...
Hold on to your popcorn, because this was never just a divorce story. Behind the closed doors, far from a polite split between two adults drifting apart, what's being dissected now reads like the slow-motion implosion of a marriage crushed under power plays, relentless pressure, and simmering resentment. Carlos King didn't sell this as a neat breakup. Nope, he framed it as a messy tangle of money, kids, influence, and skeletons that refused to stay buried. Peel back those layers, and suddenly, the picture is far more disturbing than fans bargained for. Because when your love life is a reality show under a microscope, when family opinions scream louder than your spouse, and when lawyers push signatures under stress, destruction sneaks in quietly, relentlessly. What seemed rock solid on camera? Possibly a house of cards. What seemed supportive? Maybe just calculated. What looked consensual? Hardly clear. Now, with legal teams circling, stories brewing, and public eyes on every twitch, one burning question lingers. Was this ever a fair fight, or was it doomed long before anyone admitted it? And staring at the chaos unfolding now, it's obvious. This drama is far from finished.
Then a few days later after that, on December 2nd, I'm sorry, not December 2nd, what happened on December 1st, Todd Tucker's attorney, Randy Kessler, responded to Kandi's filing. And this is where things were said, Ebony, that rubbed the general public the wrong way. Not all, but some. But I wanted to get your...
What the public is seeing now might fool you into thinking this is just another celebrity divorce airing in real time. Legal filings? Check. Carefully phrased statements? Check. Emotional social media posts that scream, "Look at me," while saying absolutely nothing? Double check. But according to Carlos King, this mess was never about two people politely splitting up. This marriage was born under pressure, from day one. Beneath the red carpet smiles and perfectly curated glam shots was a relationship riddled with imbalance, financial, emotional, psychological. And when those imbalances collide with nosy family members, power struggles, and lingering grudges, don't expect a quiet exit. From the outside, Kandi Burrus and Todd Tucker look flawless, solid, successful, a blended family making it work. But Carlos insists the camera lied. The cracks were there long before divorce papers hit the table. One partner walks in wealthy, protected, established. The other steps in under a microscope. Guess what? Expectations are never equal. And equality? That's the line between surviving or slowly collapsing. The most awkward reality? A third voice that never left. Mima Joyce. Carlos doesn't point fingers, he just watches, and what he sees is a pattern of outside influence constantly undermining Todd. Every decision questioned, every motive doubted, every intention scrutinized. Intentional or not, that pressure? It matters. When one partner is constantly under the microscope, not just by their spouse, but by the entire family, confidence crumbles, authority fades, and suddenly, partnership looks more like performance art. Carlos King paints Todd not as a villain, but as a man trying to survive a marriage where his footing was never solid. Loyalty expected, trust conditional, commitment present, autonomy missing. In that chaos, even love wobbles. Another layer? Emotional distance. Not the kind that hits overnight, but the sneaky kind that grows quietly while life barrels forward. Career demands, business expansions, touring, filming, brand building. Meanwhile, Kandi Burrus's world didn't pause for marriage. And ambition isn't betrayal, but when emotional needs go unmet, imbalance feels a lot like abandonment. Carlos doesn't claim facts, he asks questions. Was affection in this marriage truly balanced? Did public displays of unity really match private reality? And when emotional gaps open, people hunt for validation, sometimes openly, sometimes within agreed boundaries, sometimes pushing past them. Which, naturally, leads us straight to the first major legal turning point.
everything you read, and I'm so glad you read it in its totality around Todd's request on the custody piece, or the initial request. This is around a potential child support claim. Okay, so let's reverse engineer it. This is setting up a potential claim from Todd and his legal team to seek child support. I want everybody to immediately put spousal support on a separate shelf. A separate shelf. Spousal support and child support have absolutely nothing to do with each other. Okay, spousal support may or may not even be at play, depending on whether or not the judge decides to uphold the existing prenuptial agreement.
Right around this explosive stage, Carlos King drops the legal tea that most viewers totally missed. When Todd fired back at the divorce filing, he wasn't just asking for shared parenting. Nope, he demanded primary physical custody and final say on decisions. And legally speaking, this isn't shocking, but it's pure strategy. The interview breaks it down. Custody isn't just about who spends time with the kids, it sets the financial stage. The parent with primary custody usually collects child support, meaning custody isn't just a schedule, it's serious leverage. Suddenly, what some fans saw as a random power grab. Nope, a calculated legal chess move designed to even out a dynamic that may have been lopsided for years. And just like that, Todd's hands-on daddy daycare image gets a whole new layer. Not performance, not proof of guilt or innocence, but proof this divorce is being waged on multiple battlegrounds at once. If custody revealed strategy, the prenup revealed the pressure. Carlos digs into wedding footage many remembered but never really analyzed. The pre-wedding tension, unresolved negotiations, the visible stress. And that's where the second interview drops its bombshell.
The time frame. The fact that these two were 24 hours before their wedding, still going back and forth around the document itself, clauses, what this means, interpretation. Already that's a flag to any judge, Carlos. Because ideally, for a prenup to be deemed kind of best practices, this should have been done months ago. Months ago, this should have been in the can. This is what this really is supposed to look like in best practices. Is we set a wedding date, and we each give our lawyers the document. Your lawyer drafts it, they send it to my lawyer. We spend at least, on average, with this kind of money involved, a month to 3 months negotiating back and forth. What's fair, what I like, what you like, cut this out, retract this, Then we agree on the document. I sign, you sign, it's notarized, it's in the can. At least a month, if not 3 or 4 months ahead of the wedding date. When you are just the nature of the pressure cooker of vows start in 20...
Signing a prenuptial agreement 24 to 48 hours before your wedding? Huge red flag. Not automatically invalid, but eyebrow raising, especially if one person didn't have their own lawyer. Best practice? Months ahead, enough time to review, negotiate, and consent without emotional pressure. Here, Carlos King isn't accusing, he's highlighting vulnerability. If Todd signed under last-minute wedding day stress, without independent legal advice, that prenup might not reflect informed agreement, it might just reflect survival. And that alone rewrites the story of this marriage, because a union built to protect one side while the other concedes is never truly balanced. Then there's the messy layer of relationship boundaries. Kandi Burrus and Todd Tucker openly admitted to a non-traditional setup: threesomes, openness, flexibility. But here's the kicker most people miss. Openness without rules isn't freedom, it's chaos. Rules need clarity, and if activities were only allowed with mutual consent, anything outside that? Potential betrayal. And in court, definitions matter way more than intentions. This gets critical if the prenup had an infidelity clause, a rare but serious provision that could completely shift settlement outcomes if boundaries were crossed. Rare? Sure. Impossible? Absolutely not. And here's the juicy part. The total lack of clarity leaves this entire divorce up for interpretation. This isn't just a courtroom drama, it's a full-blown public spectacle. Every post, every interview, every strategic silence, analyzed not for feelings, but for motive. Carlos King doesn't shove opinions down your throat, he points out the signs. And what's coming into focus is a marriage that may never have been equal, shaped by power, influence, protection, and relentless pressure long before lawyers even showed up. And if this is only what's on the surface, brace yourself. What's next could blow it all wide open. By the time this mess hit the public eye, legal filings were barely the spicy part. The real combustible ingredient? Boundaries, or the glaring absence of them. When a marriage operates outside traditional rules, clarity isn't optional, it's everything. And according to Carlos King, clarity may have been exactly what this relationship never had. Publicly, Kandi Burrus and Todd Tucker played the honest, transparent couple, willing to air uncomfortable truths. They admitted to non-traditional dynamics, experimentation, and openness. But here's the kicker most viewers totally missed. Just because a couple admits to openness doesn't mean betrayal disappears. If anything, it makes things way messier. Carlos King isn't pointing fingers, he's shining a spotlight on the tension that's now the beating heart of this divorce. What was actually allowed versus what was assumed. Openness needs rules. Rules need agreement. And agreement? It needs clarity. If outside intimacy was only okay under strict conditions, mutual presence, shared knowledge, explicit consent, then stepping outside those lines isn't moral failure, it's a contract violation. And in court, contracts matter. This is where the drama pivots from emotional gossip to real legal consequences. Once a marriage drifts into gray areas, interpretation becomes power. The tension exploded when People magazine jumped in. According to Carlos, they reported that Todd was allegedly communicating with other women. And yes, allegedly is the word, because People magazine doesn't publish gossip lightly. Multiple sources, verification, accountability. Once it hits mainstream pages, rumor morphs into public record, and suddenly, everyone is judging, court of public opinion style. And let's be real, public opinion in cases like this is never neutral. As allegations swirled, both sides tiptoed carefully. Kandi posted about emotional pain, about putting on a strong face while secretly struggling. Todd fired back with his own carefully worded message, sharing his challenges, his fatherly role, his internal battles. Carlos King frames this not as coincidence, it's all strategy. Modern divorces aren't just fought in courtrooms, they're fought on timelines. Every post is measured, every word calibrated, every silence intentional. And in high-profile splits, perception doesn't just sway fans, it shapes leverage. As the story unfolded, one uncomfortable question refused to go away. If a marriage is open, what actually counts as cheating? Not philosophical, legal. And here, Carlos drops the most consequential bomb of the entire breakdown. Kandi Burrus and Todd Tucker have been shockingly public about inviting others into their bedroom. Threesomes? Check. Openness? Check. Boundaries? Supposedly agreed upon. But here's the kicker. If there's a bad boy or bad woman clause in the prenup, and Todd stepped outside those rules, is it infidelity? Legal experts say, it's a minefield. No universal standard exists. One judge could see openness as full consent. Another? A strict, conditional yes. Or a judge could see it as conditional permission, and anything outside those lines instantly becomes cheating, no matter how progressive the marriage looked on Instagram. The interview drives home a key reality. This is now entirely at a judge's discretion, not social media posts, not viral tweets, but legal interpretation of intent, agreement, and conduct. The same behavior could be shrugged off in one courtroom and slammed in another. And if that prenup actually has an infidelity clause, rare, but possible, the stakes are huge. This isn't scandal-mongering, it's about definitions. Carlos King warns that what once looked forward-thinking may now be a legal trap, because openness without paperwork is pure vulnerability. No clear terms? One partner's understanding becomes another's defense, and ambiguity helps only the one who knows how to argue it. In this light, Todd's legal stance isn't grabby, it's defensive, bracing against interpretation rather than seizing control. And as the legal layers pile up, the emotional toll skyrockets. Kids are watching. Families pick sides. Narratives race ahead of facts. Carlos highlights the brutal truth. Divorces get hostile not from hatred, but from fear. Fear of losing time, fear of losing leverage, fear of losing oneself entirely. And the moment fear storms in, cooperation walks right out the door. It's not just about how it ended, it's about how it ever functioned. Were both partners actually on the same page? Were boundaries clearly spelled out? And if they were, Did anyone even respect them? Carlos King doesn't hand out answers, he lets the questions hang, because unanswered questions hit harder than accusations. Despite non-stop headlines, the audience is still only seeing fragments. Legal filings stripped of context, posts stripped of subtext, statements stripped of consequence. Fans bicker over loyalty and blame, but the real moves? Quiet, tactical, behind closed doors in strategy sessions and legal briefings. Out of public view, this isn't about lost love anymore, it's about definitions, consent, fidelity, fairness, and power. Once those definitions hit a courtroom, emotions get kicked to the curb. Only interpretation rules. And interpretation? Totally unpredictable. Meaning whatever the public believes today could vanish tomorrow. By now, one fact is unavoidable. This was never just about love ending. It was about power shifting. In marriages tangled with fame, money, and public perception, divorce stops being private the second the paperwork hits the table. Once that paperwork is filed, forget about a clean break. It turns strategic, calculated, emotional, and procedural all at once. Carlos King didn't paint chaos for clicks, he laid out a system in motion. Once lawyers enter, every past choice becomes evidence, every silence suspicious, every public move deliberate. And here, nothing exists in a vacuum. That prenup? Not just paper, it's leverage. Custody talks? Not just about kids, it's positioning. Public statements? Not emotional outlets, they are narrative shields. And when all of this collides, the marriage stops being a relationship and becomes a battleground. What's dangerous isn't what's proven, it's what could be argued. Todd's challenge to the prenup doesn't automatically break it, but it opens the door to scrutiny. Timing, representation, pressure, context. Judges don't just glance at signatures, they read circumstances. And once scrutiny begins, it spreads like wildfire. Question one clause, and everything connected, conduct, consent, assumed boundaries, becomes fair game. Here's where perception bites. Open marriages often get oversimplified as permission granted. Legally, permission is never universal. It's conditional, situational, specific, and anything unclear is the easiest to contest. That's why this story isn't about what happened, it's about how it's interpreted. And interpretation? That's power. Especially when kids are involved. Suddenly, travel isn't ambition, it's absence. Support isn't help, it's a substitute. And what looked like normal parenting? Now it's strategy. Suddenly, flexibility isn't freedom, it's instability. Support systems? Not help, they are substitutes. This isn't about parenting skills, it's about framing responsibility, and framing decides the outcome. Carlos King makes one thing crystal clear without saying it outright. Both sides are preparing for multiple futures. Not because they expect the worst, but because they cannot afford to be unprepared. That's why details surface when they do, statements are worded with precision, and no one overplays their hand. Escalation doesn't roar in, it creeps in with positioning. And the deadliest stage of any high-profile divorce? When everyone is still pretending to be calm. That's when narratives harden, fans pick sides, assumptions replace facts, and speculation fills the silence. And silence? In situations like this, it's never empty. It's deliberate. Carlos subtly, unmistakably shows that public sympathy is already being negotiated, not begged for, not demanded, managed. Sympathy drives pressure. Pressure drives settlement. Settlement defines legacy. And legacy? That matters more than reputation in the moment, especially when kids grow up with the internet remembering everything. Nothing is accidental, not timing, phrasing, distance, or restraint. Because restraint signals preparation, which leads to the harshest truth. There doesn't have to be a villain for damage to exist, betrayal for trust to erode, or malice for harm to happen. Sometimes, collapse simply occurs because people built something under conditions that were doomed from the start. External pressure, family expectations, public scrutiny, skewed power dynamics, none of these alone wreck a marriage. But together, they gnaw quietly until there's nothing left to defend. Carlos King doesn't point fingers, he contextualizes. And context? Often far juicier than blame. Zoom out enough, and the real question isn't who did what, it's how did this even survive this long? That's the story beneath the headlines, Beyond infidelity and contracts, imbalance. An imbalance tolerated, normalized, and eventually weaponized. What happens next? Not about truth alone. It's about interpretation, discretion, and which arguments carry weight in court versus online. That's why this saga is so unpredictable. The same facts can spark wildly different outcomes. One ruling might uphold the agreement. Another could tear it apart. One judge might see openness as consent. Another might call it confusion. And in that gray area, that's the real tension. This isn't a story racing to a conclusion. It's inching toward confrontation, slowly, deliberately, with consequences that won't fully reveal themselves until. Decisions aren't final until judges drop the gavel and narratives can no longer be twisted. Until then, everything is alleged. Everything is strategic. Every single move matters. In divorces like this, the end doesn't arrive when papers are signed. It comes when the story finally stops changing. And that moment? It hasn't come. This saga doesn't conclude with a verdict. It concludes with something far more permanent: public memory. Long after court documents are sealed, long after headlines vanish, what sticks is the version people choose to believe. And once that narrative locks in, it rarely budges. What Carlos King laid out isn't a conclusion, it's a framework. A reminder that in high-profile splits, truth isn't loud, it's layered. Hidden in timelines, legal language, carefully chosen words, and what's never said at all. Questions remain about consent, power, assumed agreements, and blurred boundaries that mattered long before anyone realized. Fans rush to pick sides, but reality is never that simple. When money, family, reputation, and kids collide, there are no clean wins, only negotiated outcomes. What happens next won't hinge on emotion or public opinion. It will be decided by interpretation, discretion, and how past choices are framed today. That's why this case matters beyond celebrity gossip. It exposes how fragile boundaries get when love, ambition, and control coexist, how private decisions quickly turn into public leverage, and how perception itself becomes currency. So before the final chapter is written, before legal or social judgment lands, ask yourself, which parts feel familiar? What assumptions are we making? And how often do we mistake visibility for truth? Stay sharp. Stay skeptical. And never confuse silence with innocence, or noise with fact. In stories like this, the truth doesn't explode, it creeps out slowly, long after everyone thinks it's already revealed.